All right, it's 10 o'clock. I'm going to get started. I was just telling the early birds that I do recommend that you open your chat in Zoom. If you don't know how to do that, you can just roll down to the bottom of Zoom and then just click that chat button. Sometimes it's hiding behind a little menu. But we are going to use chat. We're going to try to make this interactive, and I would like to encourage you to feel free to unmute if you want to say something instead of using the chat. If you're more comfortable with that, we all love to hear each other's voices. We've been very isolated, so don't hesitate to do that. Or you could even use the raise hand feature if you just want me to address something at some point, maybe not immediately. But I do want this to be really interactive. It's all about you guys and what you want to get from this session. So please do feel free to do that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can you guys see that? You can feel free to put a yes in the chat. Or unmute. Yes, thank you. Thank you all. Okay, so we're talking about screencasting today. And my name is Audrey Brickley, and I'm an instructional technologist in ITS Learning Technology. And I always like to point that out, that I'm actually in ITS. Because, a lot of people think that I'm here to help you figure out why Windows isn't working or whatever. I'm not. I'm here to help technology work for you for teaching and learning. And the great thing about being in ITS is that we're really here, myself and my colleague, Tamika Davis, we're here to learn from you what you all need and what you need from ITS. And we can be that kind of that bridge between those ITS types and teaching and learning types, if that makes sense. So I appreciate your participation today, because the more we interact with you all, the better we can serve you. All right, so what is screencasting? I always like to start at the beginning. It's simply a video recording of your computer screen with some narration, and ideally captions. I just always want to point that out. And so just to make sure we're all on the same page as we get started, I've created a little video here just to kind of give you some very quick examples of screen sharing. So we're all on the same page. And I'm going to play it, and I've optimized my Zoom settings so that you should be able to hear it and you should be able to see it playing very smoothly. But if not, just don't hesitate to put that in the chat, and it's only 28 seconds long, so we can always start it over. Let's talk about screencasting. You can use it to record slide presentations for your students, to record tutorials, to explain assignment instructions and grading criteria. A little fuzzy this way. Or even to provide audio-visual feedback on students' work. That's it. That's my 28-second screencasting video. So does that kind of fit your expectations of what you want to do with screencasting? And you can go ahead and unmute or put in the chat kind of why you're interested in learning this skill. For making my online content more interactive. Great. Anyone else? Are you more interested in those, like creating those slide presentations? Okay, walk students through some specific how-to skills. Perfect. Okay. Online lectures, noob, that's fine. Yep, a little lecture, narrating, short tutorials. I would not go so far as to say that screencasting is required for Quality Matters. I am certified in Quality Matters, and it is important to do a lot of things like orient your students to your online classroom for Quality Matters, but that can be done with text, but it's much better done with screencasting. So that's one way to think about it. Screencasting is video, so it wouldn't necessarily be lower bandwidth than video. But we can talk more about that in a little bit. to send quick narration to students and off-campus supervisors. Okay, great. So screencasting is awesome because it personalizes your course. It gives students that meaningful interaction with you. And how many of you know about UDL, Universal Design for Learning? Does anybody know what that is? Sort of. So Universal Design for Learning is all about accessibility. So when we think about the universal design of spaces, we think about the fact that a building with a ramp is accessible to everyone, including people who are in a wheelchair. So when we think about universal design for learning, that really means that we're thinking about making our content work for all kinds of people. And what that often does, just like universal design in physical spaces, is it makes our course and our learning materials and our activities better for everyone. So an important principle of universal design for learning is multiple means of expression and representation. So did you guys notice in my little video there, I had an example where I was explaining an assignment, right? So I had my assignment instructions up on my screencast, and then I'm talking through it to students. I'm talking about the assignment. And so what that does is it makes that information more accessible to people who learn and have different kinds of preferences and different ways. So that's an important part of universal design. But also, I will say, I've worked in online learning for 5 years in higher education and 10 years before that in corporate. And the main difference, I've looked at hundreds of online courses and worked with hundreds of faculty over the years. And when they have their class in the classroom, and when they have their class online, things tend to be pretty similar in that they're giving the same kinds of assignments, activities, that all of those kinds of things. But what can be missing is just their voice, right? So you're not talking to your students as much. When you're in the classroom, you're going to talk about that assignment when you assign it. You're not just going to hand them a piece of paper and walk out the room. You're going to stand there and you're going to say, you know, this is important. When I'm grading, I really look for this. Those things, that's what screencasting and just, you know, creating videos in your online classroom can add to your online class that can be missing otherwise. And I think that's really important. So I'm going to go ahead and launch a quick poll in Zoom here. And can you guys see that question? I'm just asking you to tell me, I'm just taking the pulse here. When you're looking at a new tool, or trying to learn a new skill with instructional technology, what are you looking for? Are you looking for something that's easy to use, or are you looking for something with loads of features, lots of bells and whistles? All right, we got everybody voted, so I'm going to go ahead and share the results. So it's pretty one-sided there. We have 13 people who picked ease of use and 2 people who picked bells and whistles. And as someone who's an instructional technology consultant, I work in instructional technology all day, every day. A lot of people are surprised to learn that I'm actually in that first camp too. I look for bells, I look for ease of use. I like bells and whistles sometimes, but what I've learned, because as I mentioned, this piece of you bringing yourself into your online classroom is so important that a tool that's easier to use works better for me because you all are more likely to use it. And I think it's just so great when you all take the time to learn something like this for your students, to bring that to your classroom. So I really am a huge fan of ease of use. But because it is so one-sided, what I think I'm going to do for this session is I'm going to walk through kind of like the most basic use of screencasting. And then once I show you how easy and simple it can be, we'll go back and do it again and look at some of the bells and whistles. And some of you who don't care about those bells and whistles, you can just go ahead and move on with your day. So someone said, I would like to learn how to do screencasting, which record both screen and face. I'm going to show you that. Great. How to make the file small, how to embed the interactive poll that you did. Okay, we're going to cover most of those things. And if I forget anything throughout the presentation, you just remind me and we'll go back to it. So what are the tools we can use for screencasting? I'm going to start by showing you guys Studio today because it is the easiest to use for screencasting. It's right inside Canvas, which is beautiful. but so are Panopto and Zoom. And some people don't think of Zoom as a screencasting tool, but I'm screencasting with Zoom right now, aren't I? So you can remember that you can do this. You can use Zoom if you're already comfortable in Zoom. You can start a meeting of one. You just go ahead and click that button, start a meeting, share your screen, your video will be there, and you can use that to create a screencast for your class if you're already comfortable in that tool. The important thing to know, though, there is that we don't have unlimited storage in Zoom. So it's actually pretty limited. So you can't just we can't all, like thousands of us, keep saving to the cloud and then trying to share those videos as our videos for our students. So you're gonna have to, if you wanna use Zoom to screencast, you're gonna have to pull that use a different way to pull that into Canvas for your students. And that's probably gonna be Panopto, because Panopto integrates with Zoom and they both integrate with Canvas. So what that means is Panopto has unlimited space. We can use Panopto to our heart's content. We can create 1,000 videos and we can all do that and use that to store and share those videos with our students. And that's a great reason that we have Panopto. Studio also has plenty of storage. And the great thing about both of those tools is they don't count towards your course total. So if you've tried to upload a lot of like MP4s to your class or something like that in the past, you might hit that, you might bump into that course limit on storage. That's never going to happen with Studio or Panopto. So those are really good reasons to use those tools as well. There are a few, tools out there that people love, like Screencast-O-Matic, Loom, or Camtasia, but these are the three that you're really going to use with your UNCG login. So, you can go create Screencast-O-Matic videos, but what you're going to see when we crack that open is that Studio is based on Screencast-O-Matic. So if you're already comfortable using that, you'll be very comfortable in Zoom. And then, you can learn these other things too, but they're not right there in Canvas, which is the other important point that I always like to point out there. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to create a quick screencast just in Canvas using Studio. So can you guys all see my Canvas screen now?
Yes.
Great. All right. So have any of you used Studio before? I'm going to start there.
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
Yeah, I have.
Okay. Yes. A few of you have a little bit. Okay. So Studio is now available in all of our courses. And what's so awesome about it is that it's right here, which, is that ease of use thing. Anywhere you want to put a video in Canvas, you can create a page like I did here. You can put it in an announcement. You can put it in a quiz. Anywhere you see this content editor, you can very easily add a video using Studio. So it's going to be right now, it's going to be under this little apps button. So you guys notice this changed recently. So they've stuck Studio in here. It's funny because this doesn't look like it's a link, but it is. You just click that and it pops up. And from here, I'm going to have access to my entire Studio library. So any video I've ever created, I can add right here. And that means, like, if I made a video last semester or, for fun a few weeks ago and just dumped it in my library, I will always be able to easily add it to anywhere in Canvas from right here. But if you want to record a video, you can also do that. So I'm going to go ahead and click record. And the first time you do this, it is going to ask you to install or authorize the use of Studio, but that should only happen once for you. And it's going to ask you to choose screen capture or webcam capture. And to be honest, it doesn't really matter which one you pick here because you have choices once the screen recorder launches. So when you click record and you launch the thing, you're going to get this beautiful square. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my slides up. So let's say I want to record this Google Slides presentation. What I can do actually is just fit this little recorder around my slide. And this is one reason why I think Studio is like the easiest thing to use, because what I can do is I can fit my recorder around my slide and then still have access to my notes down here, which is wonderful. Are you guys able to see everything that I'm doing here? Just to double check. Yes, thank you. Okay, so as I mentioned, you will have choices once you open the screen recorder. So you can see right now, it's wanting to record my screen. I can switch that to webcam, and you know, you can pick which webcam you're using. It's not showing me right now because let's see, you know, because Zoom is using my webcam. So it's not going to show, but normally if I wasn't in Zoom right now, you'd see my face right here. And so like someone asked, yes, you can use Studio to add your face to your slides, which is beautiful because research does show that those slides where you're showing your slides and your face are more engaging than just the slides alone for students. And yes, it can record audio, such as a musical example, while doing a screen recording. Let me just go ahead and so see here, right here, it says computer audio. Right now I have this turned off, and I love Studio also because it gives you all these helpful tips when you roll over things. Recorder will not record computer sounds. So if I change that, I can change that to yes. Now if I played that YouTube video here, it would record that internal sound of the YouTube video or your music sample or whatever you wanted to do. You can see it's recording my, or it will be recording my voice. It's got my, you know, I can pick a different microphone from here if I needed to. And I'm going to go ahead and do screen only since you guys can't see it anyway. But did you notice that I could move that around? I love this because what this means is that if I have a busy slide, I can even make this smaller or crop it in the editing phase. So there's a lot of options here and it's really easy to use. But when I'm ready to start recording, I'm just going to go ahead and hit record, and it's going to give me a countdown, which is lovely. And now this turned red. So I know that it's recording, and it's recording everything happening inside this box. So if I wanted to, you know, click between slides, whatever, it's going to record everything. And what's also great is that I can pause it. So if I need a second to collect my thoughts between my slides, I can do that. And then when I hit record again, it's going to pick up right exactly where I left off in my recording. So when I'm done, I can either, you know, it gives me the opportunity to delete everything and start over if you just messed up or it's cringy for whatever reason. You can just delete it and start it over. But if you're ready to be done, you just click done and you're going to get this editing window. And it can be that simple. So I don't have to do any editing, but I could simply, like if I took a minute at the beginning, I could crop it or whatever. And I'm going to come back and show you guys some more of those bells and whistles. But for now, I just want you to know that it can be that simple. You can just hit record. Everything's very intuitive right there. Say what you want to say, click done, name your presentation, and click upload. And this usually is pretty quick, but if you had a longer video, it is going to take a few minutes. Now, when I go back to Canvas, there's my video ready to add to my page. So I'm going to click select. I can decide if I want to allow students to comment on the video or download the video. And then when I'm ready, I just click embed. And my video appears on this page. Easy, right? That sounds easy, right? Are you guys with me? And before I move on, I want to show you very quickly that my other favorite reason for using Studio is this very simple caption request. It does use technology, so it may not be 100% perfect, but all I have to do is come in here, tell it what language I was speaking in my video, request the captions, and it usually only takes a few minutes for these captions to come back. I did have one open, so I could show you what that looks like. Once the captions are in there, it's taking its time now. Probably because it's captioning this video. I'll come back and show you guys that in a few minutes. But just to show you what that video looks like. And now this turned red, so I know that it's recording, and it's so you see that like yellow halo around my mouse? That can be really helpful if you're showing tutorials because it does just bring a little bit more visual focus to your mouse. Recording everything happening inside this box. So And then the other feature I wanted to show you was that commenting feature. So let's say this is a short video lecture, or I'm talking about my syllabus. That's a great use of screencasting, is just like, you know, when you stand in front of your students on that first day of class, you might speak to your syllabus. You can do that here with a screencast. And then if a student has a question, they can add a comment right at that point in the video. So now that comment will pop up. And what I can do is come back here and answer that question. And every student watching that video will have access to that interaction, which is another thing that can be missing from the online classroom. Can we make the embedded video look smaller in text without the big box? I'm not sure I understand your question. If you want to unmute and maybe.
What I mean is, you see that on underneath this video, there's a comment, there's no comments yet. It's a big box. Sometimes I just want to embed the video in text to describe something. I really don't care the comments from students. So how do I do that? Because
you mean you don't want any comments from students?
Yeah, if I just want the window, like the video itself there,
sure.
No other stuff with it.
Because yeah, that's okay.
Yeah,
so like, when you do that, I don't, if you remember, when I went to add my video here, I had the option to allow comments. I don't have to allow comments. So, but when you embed that, you're still going to see this box here. You will always see that box because it does have other features such as insights. And what this does is it shows me who's watching when and for how long. Which can be a really useful tool, because let's say you like to create these hour-long videos for your students. You can come in here and see how long they're actually watching, and then you might decide to maybe chunk your videos a little bit shorter so that students, you know, are watching the whole thing. So you're always going to see that. You're always going to see these caption options and all of those things. But if you don't allow commenting, the students aren't going to see that bit.
I see.
Need to be able to record for UNCG project, but not a course in Canvas. How can I do that? So if you did want to use Studio, you actually can share these videos outside of Canvas. So share media. See, there's this option to create a public link. So you could do that. If you fell in love with Studio and you wanted to use Studio to do your recordings, you could absolutely do that. But it'll be automatic in Zoom or Panopter. You'll be able to also use those tools if that would be easier for you to share that, you know, with your audience. And we can look at Panopter a little bit more later. Do you always embed using the apps button, or can you also use the record upload media button? You can use upload record media, but and if you've recorded a screencast in another tool, for example, and you want to upload that, you certainly can use that upload media button. What that lacks is the captions. Does that make sense? So that record upload media thing is very simple. And I really am going to recommend that you guys use this captioning button, because that is required, you know, for accessibility. But it's also great for all your students because, you know, research shows that 80% of people who use captions have no hearing impairment. And especially if you have a discipline where you're using a lot of jargon, those automatic captions might not be spot on. You might have to spend some time going in there and fixing them. But if students watch the video with the captions, with that jargon, they're going to learn it better. So it's a really powerful learning tool, even if you don't have people with hearing impairments. But you can see now, just to go back to the captions, it was just a few minutes. My captions are ready. And so now I can come in here and you can see that it has used speech-to-text technology to caption my video for me. And what's great is that I know what I said, so I can quickly scan this. I'm not going to have to watch it and, you know, match word for word. I will be easily able to spot a mistake in here, and I can simply fix it. And then when everything's good, I can hit publish. And now those captions are going to be available to students. So this, to me, is like the quickest and easiest way for you to caption videos in Canvas. Do you guys have any other questions before I move on? can we use Studio for synchronous classroom lecture casting? No. Studio is an asynchronous tool. So if you want to have a flipped classroom or if you have a fully online class, the screencasts that you create in Studio will be available to the students when they want to watch them. Zoom and Panopter are more for that live streaming kind of option. And in fact, I went to our first Panopter training this week, and they told us really not to rely on Panopter. They don't want you to use that webcasting. They really want you to use Zoom. And even if you pull your Zoom videos into Panopter for sharing with your students, that's going to be more of your live option. Does Studio play well with multiple monitors? Could I put the capture region on a second monitor? Yep, you can move that capture region anywhere you want. So I do that all the time, and I love having dual monitors. It's such a helpful thing if you guys are, going to be teaching online, because you can pull up, your notes over here that make sure you're hitting all your points. You can record your whole screen over here, and it's really helpful. Can you record a screencast video, no audio first, and then add audio later? You can, in fact. That's more of like the bells and whistles features of Studio. I personally find it's a lot more work to go back and add and line everything up and all that. So I never do it that way, but if your brain works better that way, you can do that in Studio. So do you guys feel like you want to see the bells and whistles, or I kind of have been trying to think about ways to make this kind of training work well online, because I know what I do right now in the classroom, right? I would let you all go at it in Studio, and then I'd walk around and answer any questions you had, but that's a lot harder in the online world. But I was thinking that maybe something we could do is like have a volunteer walk through, and we can just kind of talk through those steps just to give you guys another view of what that looks like. But what I'll do is I will go through some of those deeper features now, and then those of you who want to hang around for that other part later, we'll do that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create, great, okay, I'm going to go ahead and create another screencast on the same page by opening Studio. And I just want to point out that you can add videos here, and something that's really helpful there is that you can record videos on your phone. And because some people, like I have an instructor I'm working with right now who teaches drawing. So she is recording her drawing techniques with her phone and then using Studio to add those kinds of videos to her course also. So that's another use of Studio. But for screencasting, I'm going to go ahead and get this started. Now, to do something a little different this time, I'm going to go ahead and record like something, in your class. And I really like this idea of a course orientation. So I'm going to quickly just, line that up. And I always like to recommend that if you guys are going to record a screencast of your Canvas course, I really recommend that you use Student View, because sometimes faculty create these great videos, but it's showing the instructor view, which looks pretty different from what students see, right? So I always recommend that you go into Student View for this. But the tricky thing with Studio is that Canvas gets confused if you're like a teacher in one tab and a student in another. Have you guys ever run into that? So you're using Student View in one tab and you're a teacher in the other tab. It doesn't like register. Canvas can't do that. So you can see here, in order to create this screencast in Student View, I've opened up a different browser. I'm using Student View in Firefox so that Canvas doesn't get confused with what I'm trying to do. So I always like to crop out that pink part. Nobody needs to see that. Okay, so I'm going to start recording. Now it's recording everything inside this box. And the first feature I want to show you is this very intuitive annotation tool. And it's intuitive because it looks like a marker. You'll never have trouble finding it. You can kind of change your colors here. And if I wanted to like highlight something like, okay, modules is where you're going to find all your course content for my class, I can use that annotation tool to add that on top of whatever you're showing in your screencast, which is really cool. When you're done, you can hit erase. And this bit does not end up in your student's view of the video, this little toolbar up here. However, it does show you clicking around. so there is that, but it's really not very distracting. Are the annotation tools available when you aren't recording? So yes, after you're done recording, you can go back in and add some annotations. That's a great question. And I am going to show the editing next. I've never tried it with a Surface Pen, but I suspect it will be exactly the same. And if you want, we can test that in ITS, although I personally don't have that. Okay, so I'm done. Let's say I'm done recording my video and I'm ready to upload it. Now I'm gonna bring this over so you guys can see. Here's where the editing tools are. So if I wanna add anything to this video, I'm gonna click this edit button right here. And this is where all those features are. So under this tools button, you'll see there's all kinds of stuff I can do in my video. Let's say, you know, I made a mistake. Sorry. Let's say I made a mistake and I want to cut it out. I just tell it, you know, where I want it to cut out, that bit right there, and I can just clip it. It's gone. I can add all kinds of arrows, highlights. I can add text boxes. I can outline things. I can even insert some videos and stuff in here too. I can change the speed. I can add my narration here. I know somebody asked that. So if I want to just record something and then come back and narrate, I can do that here. And it all kind of works the same. So like if I'm ready to add my narration here, this is where I'll do that. I'm always going to be down here on my timeline telling it where I want to add this. So let's say, you know, I want to add an arrow. So instead of using that, you know, little annotation drawing, oh, I could like add an arrow here, and this is going to show up here. I can make that show up for a really long time or a really short time. This little toolbar, I can see what that looks like. However, in my preview, it does show. Does that make sense? You guys understanding how this works?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so that's really, those are those really cool. Yeah, it is really cool. Now this part, I always like to warn, like, you don't have to use any of this. You can just record. If you didn't like it, instead of coming in here and like having to edit out little bits, you can just trash your recording and start over again. And I'll be honest that I do that pretty often. Like, I find it personally easier to just record, you know, get my thinking straight, practice a few times, and then just do a run through. But if you're more comfortable doing this and you want to get fancy, this is perfectly fine too. But you don't have to use any of these features, and you can still create awesome videos for your students. And then as soon as I'm done with all my edits, it's just back to the same thing. I'm going to add my title and then hit upload. Did you guys have any other questions about that? No. So Studio, if I make an edit that I later don't like, Studio is not really, it doesn't preserve all of your original stuff. Panopter does do that. So when thinking about what tool you want to use, those are kinds of your big questions. Studio is simpler and has more editing features. So it's easier to learn, and it has all of these cool things. It doesn't have that in Panopter. It doesn't have annotations. It doesn't have, you know, these cool like adding arrows and boxes and stuff like that. It doesn't have any of those things. But Panopter preserves everything. So you make a 90-minute recording, and then you go in and you cut out 17 things. You can come back and change which 17 things you want to show. It always keeps your video intact. So that's a pretty cool feature of Panopter. Is there a way to mimic a chalkboard? There are applied examples I like to cover. Sure, so what I personally would do if I was going to use Studio to do that is I would put a blank slide in my PowerPoint or my you know, Google slide, and then I would use the annotation tool to draw on that slide. Does that make sense? And another, if you really like chalkboards, you can actually do that in Zoom. Zoom has a whiteboard. So if I stop my share here, hi, it's nice to see you guys. I can't see you when I'm screen sharing. Let's see, if I want to share, I can do a whiteboard. And so, yeah. So if you are really focused on this kind of thing, like this is mainly what you want to be doing, Zoom might be a good feature. You know, that Zoom might be a great way for you to do that, but you can do it, you know, just like this, just on a blank slide in your screen share in Studio. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Great, yeah, sure. Okay. Is it possible to speed the playback for portions, high speed over boring writing text bits? Do you mean in the playback or in in your recording?
What I mean is when, like, I've done this in what's iMovie before, which is I take a video of myself standing at the board and talking and writing. But if I'm going to write a long equation or something, it's boring for the student to watch that. So I just write it without talking, and then in editing, I mark that section to be played at like 3x speed or something.
Sure, yeah, so there is that option in, and I can show this again if you want me to, but under Tools in the editing feature of Studio, there is that speed option, so you can speed up or slow down the video. And
Great.
Also, what's really cool is that, let me just show you. In the playback, it does have, for students, some speed control. So when they're watching your video, they can slow it up or speed it down. And what I love about that is that that's like next generation accessibility stuff. It's not required now for accessibility, but we're starting to see some of these more advanced players have that because people digest information at different speeds. So if I'm someone with a hearing impairment, I don't know if you guys have any friends with hearing, visual impairments, but they have their phone set to read things at a lightning speed that I personally can't make sense of. But because they're so used to digesting, you know, audible information, they can set that speed on their iPhone to read back to them in different speeds. And that's going to be really helpful for people who can either digest that information very quickly or would like you to slow down. So that's really cool feature there in Studio. Let me make sure I'm answering all the questions. Export share is an MP4 or move. Okay, so when you can download your Studio videos, you certainly can, and then you know, you can use them elsewhere. And I always like to recommend that because, frankly, the tools we have change sometimes, right? Like if you put all your eggs in the Studio basket, we will have Studio for at least 3 years because we paid for 3 years. But I think it's always a great idea to save copies of your stuff and not worry about, you know, losing access to that tool at some point in the future. So yes, that's a good question. And you can even allow your students to download them, which is very student friendly if you don't have other, you know, outside concerns about copyright or whatever. If you let students download, if you have online students who are maybe like living in a rural area that doesn't have great internet and they have to go to the library to work on your class, they can come and download your videos and then watch them, you know, when they have time to sit and watch them over and over again. Okay, any other questions before I show you guys Panopter? Nope. Okay, so do you guys want to see Panopter? It's a little harder to use in my opinion. Okay, let's look at Panopter. So there's a few different ways, and if you don't want to see Panopter, you can I won't be offended if you guys leave, or if you want to just stick around and do something else for a while until we come back to practicing more, that's fine too. So okay, can you guys see my Panopter window here? This is what it looks like, and the cool thing about Panopter is that it allows for a lot of different inputs. So what that means is this is primarily used for lecture capture, right? So if I have 4 webcams or 3 webcams and I want to show my screen to students, I can do that. I can use Panopto to record multiple sources and pull it all kind of into one big media recording. And students have options of how they view that. So they can view your video and your slide. They can view just your slide. They can view just your slides without seeing what you're doing on it. It has many different kind of inputs. And that does make it a little bit more confusing to learn, though. So I opened this from my computer. Panopto is a download for the most part. They have a brand new feature, which is like a web-based recorder, and I'll show you that also. But you will also access it in your course. So if you guys don't see this in your courses, do you guys know how to add something to your navigation? So if you don't see it in your course, you can go to Settings and then go to Navigation. And this is where Panopto is going to live, down here. So before I added this to my navigation, it was down here. Since I wanted to use Panopto for this in this course, I came into my settings, I dragged it up to the top, and your navigation over here is always going to mirror what you do here. So now, you know, when I save this, I'm going to see Panopto all the way at the top there. So that's how you get Panopto in your course. And it looks very similar here, just like it does on the web-based Panopto, which I can show you that also. But when you're ready to create, you'll come here and do record a new session, and what it's going to do is open this thing that I opened on my computer. And so what you can do is you can open your PowerPoint, and when you're ready to start recording, you hit this record button, and let's do capture main screen. So it says screen capture in progress. You can enable the screen capture preview. And so now it's showing you, this is my other screen. This is what it's recording. And something to know about Panopto is that it doesn't have that cool feature of where I had that box that I just put it around my slide. Panopto is going to record your whole entire screen from here. And you have to like kind of set these frames per second and all of these things. So it's a little heavier. The way I have come to think of it is that Panopto for a screen recording is kind of like putting out a match with a fire hose. Like, it's really made for lecture capture, for being in your classroom, capturing lots of different sources, and for students to be able to play that back and watch it in a way that works for them. For a simple screen capture, I personally would not use Panopto. And it automatically names it your date. So now when you come in here, it takes a while to process, so it's not going to show always right away, just like, so it's there, it's uploading now. And then you can add that to pages, just like I showed you with Studio. So here's what it looks like when you add it to a page or an announcement or anywhere you use the text editor. And I made a quick silly one just before I started. This is just a short video to show you what a screencast made in Panopto will look like. So I'm going to advance my... So you guys can see my little, it does record your video down here, but it doesn't have that same feature that Studio has where I can move this around, which I love that in Studio, because if I have something important back here, Panopto is going to cover it up no matter what I do. So I either have to plan my slides around that or not show my video. And it doesn't have those kinds of like in Studio, I can choose portions to hide my video. I can move it around on different slides. I can crop it, make it smaller. Panopto is more rigid. It doesn't really give you as many options. And I can't go in here. I can't add anything. I can't annotate. It's just very basic. And it's a little bit harder to use. So to me, Studio is kind of a clearer choice if you're not in the classroom trying to capture your lecture. Does that make sense? But I will show you they have a new beta web-based recorder. So this is what this looks like, and I find this a little difficult to look at just because of even this, what's happening down here. I choose my microphone, I choose my camera. Again, it's not, Zoom is already using it, so it's not going to show me. And then I can, choose which screen I want to show. I can choose a certain application, like if I had PowerPoint open, and it does let you pick a certain tab. So it does, if I just wanted, I knew I wanted to record, this, it is going to limit my recording to just here in this web-based module. But what I find challenging, and it's being hidden by my Zoom controls, is that I can't really see what's going on so much. So it has that similar countdown when I start recording. Now it's recording this slide, right? But if I want to advance my slide, I have to go back over here. Now I'm going to talk to this slide in my recording. Now I'm going to have to go back here to stop it. And the other thing it does is it cuts off before you think it does. So like if I hit stop now, that sentence would have gotten cut off, and I'll show you because that happened on my page here. I find it, where was that example? So if I finish playing this video, it just cut me off. This is just a short video, and this one, and then when I'm done, I'm gonna go back to my Panopter tab and stop the recording. Yeah, so it cut me off. There's just a lot more to be aware of with Panopter. You have to be like switching back and forth, whereas in Studio, it gives you that beautiful little record button right there on top of whatever you're recording. So it's just a little bit more intuitive to use. Does that make sense? Do you guys have any questions about Panopter? Nope. Okay, I will say there are some cool things in Panopto, such as Smart Search, which I love. If I did have a large amount of videos I wanted to share with my students, and I had a lot of tutorial-based things, let's say, you teach like statistical methods or whatever, and you're a student in the class, and my professor has all my videos in Panopto, I can go search for a term. So like every time you mention a certain word, I can type that in the search, and it'll bring up a list of all the mentions of the video content. So not just which videos are named that, but everywhere my professor mentions that term, it'll show me, and I can click right to those timestamps in all those videos to find the thing that I'm looking for. So I always caution faculty against burying information in videos. Like you don't want to, like when I said, explain your assignments with a video. You don't want to just have video. You want to have video and your written instructions. So students don't, if they have a quick question about what they're supposed to be doing, they don't have to watch a 10-minute video to figure out, that one little bit. But Panopto really has kind of solved that problem with that cool Smart Search feature. So if that is definitely something to consider. But you can always create your videos however you want and then pull them into Panopto to use those kinds of features. And Studio and Panopto both have quizzing. So I can show you guys a quick example of what that looks like. So let's say I do record a lecture for my students, and I want them to watch it. Right? I put the time and effort into making that video for them, and I want them to watch it. I can actually add questions to my video at different points in the timeline, and then they will sit and watch and answer these questions. It makes them more actively engaged with the content. It kind of shows them what you think is most important in that video. And then they're gonna, if you tie it to a grade, they're gonna come to class prepared, right? So if you're doing this kind of as like a flipped model, you can use this kind of quizzing feature to make sure students are actually watching the video and engaging in that content before they come to class where they're supposed to use it. And Panopto does have this feature also. And I can hide these. I have these questions showing here for the sake of the tutorial. But you can hide these little bubbles from students so they don't know where those questions are going to pop up. Can you clarify again the advantage of Panopto in terms of saving original files? So can we use it to save an original file from Studio prior to editing? I'm not sure I understand. If you want to unmute.
Sure. So I think I understood Panopto when you first described it as more of like a cloud platform, because you mentioned how I think Studio maybe has some limits on the size of a file.
Yes, so Studio does have a limit. I think it's 10 gigs per video. So you wouldn't use Studio for a very long video. And best practice for online courses anyway is to keep them short, 7 to 15 minutes. You don't really want to go above that. But you can record whatever you want in Studio and then add it to Panopto. So you could do that. But I would edit in Studio because Panopto editing, like it doesn't have those features that Studio does have.
But so great. And so then, but you also mentioned that once you edit in Studio, you can't, it writes over your original file, right?
Right. So yeah, so that's true. Panopto does preserve your entire file.
So can we upload the original file to Panopto, keep it there, then have that same lecture, a pared down version of that screencast, right? And
sure, yeah, you could do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there a way to make your videos expire when the semester is over? So even if they download a Studio or Panopto video, it will no longer play when the semester is done. No, I believe once the students download that video, they will have it. I do not believe that I've never seen that feature. I can look into it, but I think I would know about it if it was there. And if you should just make those videos non-downloadable, that's probably what I would recommend if you're concerned about that. Anything else? Does anybody want to try it? Does anybody want to be like a volunteer to share their screen and walk through the process just to make sure we have that process down? You guys seem pretty advanced. I will say your questions are very good. You're welcome. Yeah, if anybody wants to hang around, I mean, that's really, I did make some a slide with some best practices for you guys, and I'll walk through those real quick. My first tip is always be okay with laughing at yourself because it can be jarring and cringy to hear your voice and see your face. And they say that's a big part of Zoom fatigue. Like when you have Zoom meetings all day, when you're in a regular meeting, you don't have to see yourself all day. So that can be kind of jarring. And I think that don't stop because that part makes you uncomfortable, because it does get much easier. Just be okay laughing at yourself. Don't get like angry and mad and be like, I'm not bothering with this, because it feels clunky and awkward at first. I used to hate my voice. Now I don't mind it anymore because of all the screencasting I've done. So there's no need to be perfect. Research actually shows that students prefer homegrown videos. So they're more engaged by seeing the real you. They don't want some professionally produced slick video. They're more engaged by just you sitting in your office chit-chatting with them. They're okay with ums and ahs. It's no big deal. Don't put that pressure on yourself. You don't have to redo every video every time you say for a minute. It's no big deal. Definitely use a microphone, and I will say, if you want to try it, like, either way, I don't look great with this headset on, but it makes such a difference in the audio quality that I think it's really worthwhile to use it. You'll notice a difference if you kind of play with that. And then also for accessibility, it's really important that you say what's happening on your slides or on your screen. So if I'm doing a tutorial and I want to show you how to make this bold, I'm not going to say select this and click here. I'm going to say select your text and then click File, Save, or click Bold. You need to articulate what's happening so that if somebody has a hard time seeing what's happening on your screen, they'll still be able to hear what's the content of your video. So we don't want to do a lot of that where we're only showing or only telling. We want to constantly be showing and telling to make it more accessible to everyone. And same thing with don't leave things on the slides unsaid, which I'm kind of doing right now, but just make sure you're articulating everything. So don't assume that somebody can see what's on your slide, because people might only be listening. Definitely show yourself, like I said, use that video the little picture-in-picture kind of video thing that is more engaging. And I mentioned using the browser to capture student view. So I think we have one more question. Best practices for quiz in Studio. Do you require students to answer a question before it continues? Yes. So they have to answer the question before the video goes on. And I think that the best way to keep students from just skipping to the questions is to hide those. You'll see when you create a quiz, you can hide those little indicators on the timeline, but you can't control it down to every second. I haven't yet shown how to add a quiz to Studio, but I can do that. If I want to record my writing on an iPad using a stylus to write over slides, pre-made slide deck, while capturing voiceover narration, possible tool recommendations. You can use either or. You can use Studio. I've used it on my iPad. It works great. You can use Zoom. Either one of those will work well. But I think Studio is really, honestly, the best tool for that. And if you need help with that, Ian, and if any of you guys need help with any of this, like if you want to go play and you're like, it's too clunky, I am available for one-on-ones, and so is my colleague, and so is your school ITC. So we can definitely plan some time in Zoom where you're sharing your screen and I'm walking you through the steps of doing this. Studio on iPad through browser or Canvas app. So I have used it through the app. That's how I have used Studio on my iPad, and it works very well. I made a quiz on a video yesterday, but I'm not sure how to attach it to the gradebook. Great question. I will walk through that in a second. Any more questions before I move on to the Studio quizzing? All right, I'm going to go ahead and show this, and I'll check back on the questions in another minute. So I'm going to show you first, actually. This is really confusing. If you go to Studio here on your course navigation, and you go to add a quiz, this is kind of like where you find your features in Canvas. There's no option to add a quiz. If I go to Studio here in my global navigation, all of a sudden I have the option to create a quiz. So if you get here, I get this question a lot. It's not intuitive at all. If you're trying to add a quiz and you don't see the option here to add a quiz, just go over to Studio, your library from the global navigation. So let's say, I want to add a quiz to this video. I'm going to click Create Quiz, and it's really very simple. And the reason why it asks you for a title is because you can actually create 5 different quizzes on your Studio video. So let's say you want to use the same video for 2 different classes. You can actually create 2 different sets of questions based on, the content of that class. So I'm going to name it, and then here's where I can decide to hide the question markers. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play my video, and now this turned red. So I know that here's where I want to add a question. I'm going to hit this plus button, decide what kind of question, and it's no essay questions in here. Multiple choice, true or false, or multiple answer. And then I'm going to type my question stem. And then, you can choose these different options. Let's say I want to shuffle the choices. Save. Now that question is a part of my video. So let's say I just want to have that one question in there. Now you can see how it added this little icon at the top that shows that there's a quiz. So you can see which of my videos I have actually added a quiz. It has the little, the icon for quiz on there. Now, if I want to add this to my course, I can add it anywhere. Just like anything else. Let's say I want to add it to this page. I can come in here. And this is another cool thing, like it just sits on your page, right? Like I can move it down by just hitting return. I can add some instructions here for my students, like to tell them what this is for, what I expect them to get from it or whatever. I can type all those things here and that'll appear on the page. But let's say I want to add that quiz. I'm going to come in here And again, it shows me that I have a quiz on this video with that little rocket icon. I'm going to hit select. And now that I've added a quiz to this video, I see this option. This wasn't here before I added that quiz. And I'm going to pick, if I had multiple quizzes here, I would pick there and then click embed. And now this is here with that question for my students. However, doing it this way is not going to connect it to your gradebook. So if you just want this as a no stakes, like formative assessment opportunity, you can come in and see how your students are answering, if they're getting it, whatever. You can simply put it on a page like this. If I want to add it to my gradebook, I need to add it as an assignment. So let's say I'm going to make a new assignment. And now the important thing to remember is that I'm not going to add it here in my instruction space, because if I do that, it's still just going to be no stakes for students. The way I add it here is by coming down to submission type and selecting external tool. Now I'm going to click find, and I'm going to look for studio in my list. And now that list of videos is going to come up again. So now I'm going to select this one. I'm going to select my video quiz, click embed. Now when I save this, now this is connected to my gradebook as a graded assignment. Does that make sense? Don't put it in the rich content editor. Add it as an external tool. That can be hard to remember. I did create some instructions. Let me see if I can pull that link up for you guys so that you can have it. So there is this KB where I've included those instructions because it's not really that easy to remember, but I put that process here on this page. So I'm going to copy that and drop it in the chat for you guys, just in case you want to hold on to that, or you can always go search for it in the KBs. You are very welcome. Does anybody else have any other questions, or does anybody want to stick around and practice and be a guinea pig? You can feel free to do that, or we can end it here. And just remember, we're always here for you guys to help you with these one-on-one. You know, we can sit and walk through it together. You're not on your own. I know you guys are working really hard to make things great for your students, and it's awesome. I'm so impressed with you all. So keep up the good work, and we're here if you need anything.